Put it right down the.
Wait a couple minutes to allow people to filter in a little bit, but we'll get started in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about my clients thing and I had to look up on my and that's my boss at it does, right? Not feel like not pussy, not shitty. It's just like we don't know. They're like standing for a star. It's like no, it's history. But it's okay.
So we're good. Wait.
Sorry, you. Because I don't think oh yeah,
idea. They're like,
I can't track.
right, yeah.
Did a lot of things, been busy.
Yeah.
Get in there, like they say, yeah, you didn't do nothing, just get in the way.
Without my thumb, my face.
They still talking.
I know. My earrings stuck with my mouth. Yep. Thank you. So look, we're just gonna start.
At this time,
You loud.
we'll begin this open town hall meeting. My name is Pastor Alan C. Overton. I am the pastor of the Christ Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. I am a member of the Concerned Pastors for Social Action. I am the moderator of the Great Lakes District Baptist Association. This time, we're going to ask those on the platform to introduce themselves so that you will know who they are.
Hi, I am Melissa Mays. I'm Flint resident. I founded What Are You Fighting For in January 2015 with my husband back then. And I'm operations manager with Flint Rising. Some of you may have seen me, yelling and doing whatever. But I'm also a plaintiff in the Safe Drinking Water Act lawsuit, and I'm very proud of that. Do you want me to continue with mine, or are we doing it? Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bonsitu Kitaba. I am an attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union of Michigan, the ACLU of Michigan, and we are one of the attorneys representing the plaintiffs in the Concerned Pastors case, the Flint pipe replacement case.
Hi, everyone. I'm Addie Rolnick. I'm an attorney with the Natural Resources Defense Council, or NRDC, and I'm also one of the attorneys representing plaintiffs in the pipe replacement lawsuit.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Tallman. I'm also an attorney with the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, and I'm counsel to the plaintiffs in this Concerned Pastors lawsuit. Thanks for being here.
This time, if you join me, it's not on my script, but I want you to put your hands together and thank these lovely young ladies from ACLU and NRDC. Young ladies have worked diligently and very well to make sure that deadlines and illustrations has taken place in this community. Also, they are continuing to work to make sure that it gets done. So today, we're here to provide some updates on the status of our lawsuit brought in 2016 by the Concerned Pastor for Social Action, Melissa Mays, ACLU of Michigan, and the Natural Resource Defense Council against the city of Flint and the state of Michigan. In 2017, as many of you know, we resolved our claims through a settlement that required the city of Flint to find and replace all lead pipes in the community. We're going to provide some status updates about how close we are to getting the job done. We'll answer questions that you may have about what's going on with the pipe replacement and efforts to fix the property damage from your pipe replacement work. It has been 6 years on this very day, March the 28th, 2017, when a federal court approved the precedent settlement in our case. 6 years ago, the city agreed to replace Flint lead pipes by January 2020 and no cost to Flint residents. While this settlement was not all of the justice this community deserved, wanted, or needed, it was a huge milestone. But 6 years later, the work of replacing Flint's lead lines is still not done. This community has been through so much, but I'm hopeful that thanks to the persistence of the people of Flint, as well as these attorneys, we're going to see the end of this project soon. This community remains strong and will not let the city ignore its commitments. When this project is finally done, it will be thanks to the people of Flint who have continued to hold their leaders accountable for 8 consecutive years.
So, and Pastor Upton's right. So yeah, we had already been in court for a year and a half when we finally got to March 28th of 2017, which was the settlement date, when all parties agreed to get that, to, work together to get this done and do what's right by the residents of Flint. We actually, when the judge announced it, it was signed, it was ready to go. On the steps when we were leaving the courthouse, I actually made a joke. I'm like, I'm really gonna miss you guys. I'm gonna miss my attorneys because they've been like family to me up until, because it had been 18 months. So 6 years on top of those 18 months, they are family, and which is why Pastor Overton applauded them, because they've not stopped fighting for us through countless hearings back and forth, and not letting one thing slip by, not letting it just be good enough, because that's not what's right for us in Flint. So, but here we are. As plaintiffs in this case, our role is to monitor the city's work and implement the settlement. So I always joke that it's a worst babysitting job I've ever had, and I get no pay. I don't even get the $2 an hour I got when I was a kid, but it's worth it. It's worth it because the world is watching us. And as the infrastructure bills are rolling out across, the money's going out across the United States, we want to be the first one done and done right, so all the rest of the cities can have the same kind of progress. So what our job is to monitor this, but we don't manage it. The city has been in charge of this, and we've had to watch them. So yes, when there's things that are going wrong, the city is managing the program, not us. But we're there to watch and basically go to the judge if things aren't going right and we can't get things resolved. So we just want to make that very clear. On top of the fact that, yeah, this is the pipe replacement lawsuit meeting. This is not the civil damages and everything, which I know there's, because we have so many lawsuits out there, there can be confusion. But this is about the pipe replacement and the property restoration, because that is also a part of it. And we'll talk more about that. But I don't know if anybody knows me, but I'm furious. I'm mad, like pretty much all the time, but this especially, because as much as I do adore the folks up here who have worked so hard for us tirelessly, this shouldn't still be happening. And we shouldn't have to babysit our own, pipe replacement, but we do. And you folks have been helping us with that as well. Other cities like Newark and Benton Harbor finished this work in 4 years or less with our help, and with the help of the NRDC actually, and ACLU. And to make things worse, the work the city has done has been disorganized and does not inspire confidence among Flint residents. I don't know if anybody really believes their water is safe at this point in time or not. But yeah, the work should have been done. And so our goal is to see that it's done and done the right way. We're committed to seeing this through and make sure every person in Flint gets the benefits they're guaranteed under this settlement agreement. And that's why you'll see the forms in the back, the know your rights and the information. We want to make sure everybody's informed and educated so they can push back on things and push for the things that you deserve. And we're here today to make sure everyone knows what's going on with the pipe replacement program and to make sure everyone knows your rights and has the ability and the chance to participate.
Thanks, Melissa. So I'm just going to provide some brief background to situate us to clarify exactly what this lawsuit is about. Before I go into that, I just want to acknowledge our teammates sitting over here. This is Nicole Vandal and Melanie Calero, who did a ton of work to help put this event together. So we are so appreciative of them. And we also have our teammate, Cindy Roper, sitting in the audience. Thanks for being here, Cindy. So as Melissa and Pastor Overton mentioned, we're here today to talk about a lawsuit that was brought in 2016 by 4 plaintiffs, the Natural Resources Defense Council, the ACLU of Michigan, the Concerned Pastors for Social Action, and resident Melissa Mays. We brought this lawsuit under a federal law called the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is the federal statute that is supposed to protect the safety of our drinking water. So we sued the city of Flint and several Michigan state officials that were in effect operating Flint's water system. The goal of our suit was to get forward-looking relief for the community. So we were looking to make sure the water is treated correctly. We were looking to make sure that the officials monitored the tap water to identify additional problems with the lead. And we wanted to make sure that going forward, the treatment plant was operated in accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act, and in particular, the regulations for lead and copper, a set of rules called the Lead and Copper Rule. So this lawsuit was only focused on forward-looking relief. As folks have mentioned, this is not a damages lawsuit, and so it can only address one contaminant, lead, and one piece of the gross injustice that has been suffered by the community. And Bonsi is going to make a couple of other comments on that.
Sure, thank you, Sarah. And as Melissa and Sarah mentioned, there are several other class action lawsuits involving lead in the city of Flint that are ongoing still. One of them being the civil damages suit on behalf of Flint residents who were affected by the lead poisoning situation, as well as the special education lawsuit that is tied to that as well. So those lawsuits are independent and separate and apart from this lawsuit. However, the ACLU of Michigan represents Flint children in the special education suit. And if anyone has questions about where that lawsuit is currently, I'd be happy to talk to you after this event is over.
You too. So as I mentioned, we brought this lawsuit in 2016. In 2017, we resolved our claims through a court enforceable settlement agreement. So as folks mentioned, exactly 6 years ago today, a federal judge in Detroit approved an enforceable settlement agreement to resolve our claims under the Safe Drinking Water Act. That settlement focused on removing the lead pipes. So it requires the city of Flint to find and remove all the lead service lines in the community. It required the state of Michigan to pay for that work up to $97 million. It also required additional robust tap water monitoring for lead. And at the beginning of the program, there was distribution of faucet filters and also had some provisions relating to bottled water. Some of those provisions have sunset. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But one of the key things that happened as a result of our lawsuit was this enforceable commitment to find and get the lead pipes out. They were supposed to finish that work within 3 years by 2020, yet we're here today in 2023, the work is still not done. What has happened in that meantime, in terms of our groups, we have been, as Melissa was saying, monitoring the city, and we have had to go back to the judge 5 different times over the last 6 years to enforce our agreement. So the city made promises and commitments, and it has not lived up to those. And we have had to go back to the court time and time again to make sure that the court enforces its order and that the city gets the job done. And so I'll hand it to my colleague Addie to talk about what's happened in the last couple of months.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. So we went back to, as Sarah mentioned, we've gone to court 5 times to enforce this agreement. Most recently, we did this in November of last year after the city failed to meet additional requirements of the settlement. And our goal in filing this motion, which we won, was to force the city to finally finish the overdue work as soon as possible. So this motion addressed 2 violations, 2 ways that the city did not meet its commitments. First, the city was originally supposed to be done with all of this work over 3 years ago in January 2020. For multiple reasons, including coronavirus, and because it became apparent early in the settlement that the city didn't know where the lead lines are in Flint and had to dig up many more homes to find those lead lines than anticipated. We agreed to a few extensions of that original deadline. The city then agreed that September 30th, 2022 would be the last deadline, that it would finally get all of this work done. The city missed that deadline by a very wide margin. The city's work has really slowed over the last couple of years. It's been doing many fewer excavations per week or per month than in the earlier years of the program. And in 2022, the city did no work until 2 weeks before its deadline. So we went back to court about that. The other issue that we went back to court about is that after the city digs up your yard to see what your pipe is made of and replace it if it's made of lead or steel, the city has to fix your property. It has to make sure your lawn has grass on it, that you have a complete sidewalk, and that your driveway is complete. The city has left a lot of this work undone for years. It has not been restoring homes as soon as it excavates them. Instead, it's been leaving that work for some unknown later date. And the city has also failed to keep track of where it has done this work. So we went to court about that too. So after a hearing in February, the court granted our motion, which we were thrilled about. The court recognized that the city has failed to follow through on its promises and has failed to meet this basic function of keeping track of where it has done property repair work. So as a result of that, I'm going to share sort of where things are now and what the court ordered. So first, on the excavations and replacements piece, the city has until August 1st to get that done. So we are monitoring the city closely and to make sure they meet that deadline. We have every hope that this time they will meet this deadline and not continue their past practice of missing deadlines they have agreed to. The city has said publicly that they are 97% of the way done with this program. That's not really correct.
That's right.
The city may be most of the way done with the excavations and replacements, but they still have obligations to over 1,000 homes. There are still hundreds of homes in Flint that haven't received the basic outreach required by the agreement. The city is supposed to send a mailing to every home and knock on every door at least twice to make sure people know how to participate in the program. And the city, there are also people who have signed up for the program and haven't gotten their line checked. Every one of those homes needs to get work done before August 1st. And the city is still finding lead lines. This fall, they found lead lines at over 30% of the pipes they checked. So there is still real work to be done checking and replacing lead lines. Second, there is a ton of this property repair work to be done, and the city doesn't even know how much of that work needs to be done, which is a huge problem. So the way the city is going about figuring that out is they are driving to homes in Flint where they know they dug up the pipe, but they don't have a record of whether or not they did the property repairs. And they're basically inspecting those properties to see whether they need additional repair work or not. And the court ordered the city to check whether certain very specific criteria have been met. So they need to check and make sure the lawn looks right and the sidewalk looks right and the driveway looks right, and that the water shutoff valve is level with the lawn and not sticking up and creating a tripping hazard. So the city is doing that process now. If the city goes to a home and decides it won't be doing any more property repair work, it needs to leave a door hanger for the resident so that you know that the city has made a decision about your home. And if you have questions about that or you disagree, you can call the city about that. And you can also let us know. We'll provide our contact information at the end. We want to make sure that we're tracking what the city is doing and that this process is going right, correctly identifying where the work still remains. So the city should finish that process of figuring out where it still needs to do property repairs by May 1st. And at that point, the city will come to us and say, this is how much we have left and this is when we can get it done by, and we'll be negotiating that with them. We think all this work should be done by the end of this year. It's been long enough. However, until we know how much property repair work still needs to be done, it's hard to say, what a realistic deadline for that is. And it's possible this could extend into 2024 because we want to make sure that this work gets done and it gets done right and that people are left with repaired properties. So I know that was a lot of information. So I'm just going to step back for a moment and summarize what you all can expect going forward and what your rights are under the settlement. And then we'll take questions. So first, as I mentioned, there's an outreach process. So the city has to send every address in Flint that's eligible for the program a mailing, and it also has to knock on every door twice, and at least one of those visits has to happen after 5 p.m. or on a weekend. And that's to make sure everyone knows how to sign up to participate in the program. If you don't respond, if the city doesn't reach you through that outreach, they don't have to keep contacting you, but you can still sign up to participate. And the city is currently letting anyone in the city sign up to participate who's eligible. Second, if you sign up to participate in the program, the next step is for the city to schedule an excavation with you. So what they'll do is call you and say, we want to come at this time. Does that work for you? And then you need to be home or some adult needs to be home when the city comes to do the work. If no one is home when the city comes to do the appointment, they're supposed to call you to reschedule and also leave another door hanger for you saying, hey, we stopped by and you weren't home. So the city will call you to reschedule. You also have the opportunity to call the city to reschedule. If the city can't reach you to reschedule, they're not going to come back if you miss that first appointment. But you can always call the city and say, hey, I still want my line replaced between now and August. I want to reschedule a time. So next, there's this property repair issue. So for homes that are being excavated or being dug up now, the city is doing repairs immediately. So if you or anyone you know has a home that is dug up either this fall or this spring, they should be seeing their property repaired very quickly. And that's something that the court ordered. The city can no longer leave this work for much later in the future. And for homes that were dug up earlier in the settlement, that's where the city is doing this process of figuring out where it needs to do work. So if you live in a home where the city dug up or replaced your lead line and didn't do the property repairs, you should either in the next year receive a door hanger saying the city has decided that it doesn't need to do additional property repairs at your home, or you should see the city come back and actually do the work. So that's what should happen. And if that's not happening, you can contact us and we'll provide our contact information at the end of this presentation, or you can contact the city and let them know that you're still waiting. So I think that's everything we wanted to share. Does anyone have anything to add before we get into Q&A?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge, at least what we have heard from both Melissa and Pastor Overton, how incredibly frustrating this process has been. The fact that it's not done yet, the fact that the city has really mismanaged this program, and the fact that we as plaintiffs and counsel in the lawsuit don't have perfect tools to force the city to shape up and make sure it manages the program correctly. I think our goal is to use the available tools that we have and to, work with Melissa and the concerned pastors and other groups to try to press the city in every way possible, both using the court and other means to try to make sure that this work gets done. And we have been here, we have been working with these groups on the ground since 2015, and we are going to continue this partnership until the work is complete and until every address has been done and every property has been repaired. And that's part of why we're here. And we are, welcome all questions from folks. I don't know, does anyone else have any? Great. So I think we can just do hand raises for the time being. Yeah, in the back, sir.
Thank you all for coming out. I know Flint, currently, we don't have a DPW director, and we've had many, I would say, integral positions when it comes to doing this work. Many of those positions have been vacant. So how are we monitoring the city, being that we don't have a actual DPW person, being that we don't have some of those key contacts and positions to be out doing this work? So who is our point of contact? And then I know we're looking for a judicial remedy through the court. Well, what kind of recourse do we have with our legislative branch of government? Is there any, should we be petitioning to our Genesee County caucus and state representatives to get some laws on the books? Because Ben Harbor has done this work in 3 years. Lansing has done this work in about 2 years. I mean, we put people on wheels in this city, and we can't fix roads and sidewalks. I mean, we have a rich history of really, like the innovator building, putting everybody in the car. We still got, pipe replacement at other smaller cities with less people, less per capita. They've been able to do this stuff a lot quicker, and we haven't been. So it's kind of hurtful and embarrassing, being that we're from the great city of Flint, Michigan, and we still doing something that other cities smaller than us have done in a matter of 3 years, and we don't even have the positions. Like if I got a basketball team and I'm thinking we're going to be better next year, well, who's the coach? We don't even have a DPW director, so it's hard to believe that we're monitoring this work getting done when we don't have the people in the position to do the work.
So do you want to take a first comment
So-
with that?
You're not wrong. I mean, you're absolutely not wrong. We have, our main contact as for the program, we've gotten input from the DPW, but ultimately it has to go through the city administration and the city attorney. And so when we did have a DPW, it was difficult to get information, for him to give and us to get, because the city attorney and city administration is right there in the middle. And 100% absolutely press our elected officials. I don't know if anybody's reached out to the mayor's office or the city administrator or anything like that. Be helpful. It would sure be helpful. I don't get calls back. So, that, if anybody else,
Don't.
not at all, not at all. So, that, yeah, yes. And then also, but pushing up to the state rep level, absolutely. State senator, absolutely. Because it's not just the service lines. And again, we sued for what we could get under the existing law, which the existing law is outdated, right? I mean, it hasn't been updated in decades as for the lead and copper rule. We were able to get the service line replaced. Now, we were able to push, at first it was only going to be just the curb stop, but we were able to push to get the entire service line replaced, and not just lead, but galvanized steel as well. That's thanks to the plumbers union that helped us with information. So we've been able to get more than the law gave, especially keeping, the pods open for as long as we could. Bottled water's not covered under the law. So the laws need to change because none of them are health protective. None of them are up to date at all. So yes, pushing legislature, pushing for federal legislation to cover the distribution mains. Everybody was super happy over Super Bowl weekend, right? When we all didn't have water, had the boil advisory yet again. The distribution mains got injured and damaged. They were already old, but they already got damaged with this as well. Interior plumbing. Don't know anybody who's had to take their pipes on their studs like we have. Lots of people have because of water leaks and stuff. So there's a lot to be done. And I'm happy to talk with you after this to get people going because it's been a lull, I think, because when mainstream media kind of poofed out and, did the, all about the election stuff, we lost a lot of fire. Plus, also, there's so much work being done on the ground. There's also so much to do. It's overwhelming, but if we can kind of relight the fire of community organizing back with everybody, we can look at all the things that have been getting worked on and that still need to be done and get our numbers back to where we had them. Because also COVID put a halt on that, but okay, we do need to work together because we still got to fight for what's right for us.
My second part of the question is, what kind of enforcement did the court give us? Did the court put any type of sanctions or did the court come back with any kind of enforcement tools or vehicles that we could administer here at the local level to say, hey, they didn't do this by August 1st. This is enacted now, or this is a penalty to the administration, or is there any type of real tactile enforcement that we get from the court?
Yeah, that's a really great question. The first step and the step that we have pursued so far, and it seems almost like a circular thing, but it's an order, the judge issuing a federal court order telling the city to follow another federal court order that it already didn't comply with. And so that is the remedy that we've gotten so far. We've also, in the most recent motion where we were in court in the fall, we said we don't it's not enough to just set another deadline. We need more than just pushing out the deadline and pushing it out and pushing it out. So what we asked for and what the court ordered is for the city to do additional planning, to create detailed plans to explain exactly how it's going to get from where we are today to the finish line in terms of parts, in terms of labor, considering weather shortages, things like that, to force and make sure the city does that planning. We also are getting regular monitoring reports from the city, weekly and monthly reports about how many pipes they're digging up, how many people have provided their consent forms, and we are posting those reports on our website so everyone can access them. So I think, as you mentioned, there are some circumstances where additional penalties and sanctions can be imposed by the court if a certain standard is met. And as the plaintiffs in this lawsuit, we're considering all of our options, and we continue to consider all available options under the law because, frankly, we've been 5 times, and every time we say this is really,
We're losing on economic development if we're not doing the infrastructure necessary. I know they're building EV vehicle plants everywhere, putting $4 billion in places, but we're probably not in the running because we can't even get the water run.
Thanks so much for your comments. Let's go to some other folks.
And wait afterwards, please. I want to talk to you, please. Thank you.
I'll just mention for folks watching online, if you post a comment, we will also be taking those questions. So, but we'll take questions in the room first.
Lady in the rear, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, is it possible to get some documentation for insurance, homeowners insurance?
About
States proof that service lines have been replaced?
That's a great question.
It would be good for people that may decide to sell their property later.
Absolutely.
We'd asked about that because you have to do that for the lead paint, right? You have to do, so we asked that, and I know we'd asked through the state, through DIPS, is it, the insurance, yep, that's right. To see if there's something that, of course, nothing's required at this time, but not saying that's not gonna happen down the line. And it would be good that everybody had this in their hands. So, I mean, we saw what happened with homeowners insurance when the crisis hit the news. So it would be great to see that. So if there's some kind of, whether even if it's just a statement that shows your work was done, which, I mean, we should be able to see if we can get one of those from the city. Or maybe we just get help from some insurance professionals that can give us a form letter or something like that, because that would be super helpful.
But the city should be tracking, and the city government should have records of which pipes they dug up, what they found, and what they replaced with. So if there is a desire from the community, I think going to the city to press to see if that kind of documentation is available would be a good option. But the city should have, and they're responsible for keeping those records.
Not you, sir. Oh, man, help, and the gentleman back.
I wouldn't say it's gonna be kind of horrific, but we're waiting for it to die off. And I'm just a living example of it. I went as far as the ombudsman. The ombudsman, they let her go because I bugged her so much about what had happened in my home. The pipes, first it started out with the smart meter they put on the house, on your home. Then the pipes started leaking. Then they didn't want to, go from this point to that point. So it flooded my basement out. Next thing, the pipes busted. Lolita me and my daughters had to go to the shelter of Flint because the whole house had just flooded with water. I was constantly bugging the ombudsman and everything. I from the shelter, the water had affected me so much because I had to go back in there. I ended up in the hospital in a coma for 6 months because the pipes and the water was so bad. I'm in the shelter right now, so if you hung anything on my door, I wouldn't even know about it, especially when I was in a coma for the past 6 months. You know what I'm saying? Then they want you with back taxes and this and that. The city can't even manage itself. So how do you think they're going to manage anything else? We need to put together like a citizen group, and we need to manage it ourselves. I done got to the point where it got so personal that I'm trying to work with the EPA civil side, and I'm trying to take this before the United Nations with the EPA and with you guys because you're lawyers. I know I can't speak on my behalf. I'm not a great speaker like most of you are, but you have the right. You've given us the right to work through you, and there's other programs that can help us. Because they're not going to do it. It's not happening. It's not. It's a fairy tale. They're going year by year by year. I'm lucky to be here myself. This is like a Like I said on my jacket, you know, that's how bad they get. You know, fight like it's no tomorrow. Flint, you know, and where are the people at? You know, because we're tired, we're dying off. You know, we don't know what to do next. Nobody's giving us no answers. But year after year after year after year, and then that year hit me, where I almost died in the hospital. I'm still in the shelter right now. You see what I'm saying? Trying to get help or whatever. So I mean, I'm gonna do what I gotta do on my end. And I'm glad to be here today. I'm glad that what all you have done. But we got to come together. And if we don't, I can't say I gotta do what I gotta do. You know what I'm saying? But I will be reaching out the best I can to you all about trying to do something about it. But this is a death and life struggle. It's just not about no pipes right now. This water is killing us. And it's silencing us and it's making us quiet. And we're dying off and we're losing our property.
Amen. Sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I can't answer that. I mean, everything you said is
We're
correct.
we're dying off. Our water quality is low. We got some of the highest rates in the nation. And I keep hearing the city is the antagonist to the story, but who exactly at the city? Who is the executive branch that makes this decision and who is held accountable? So if we go back in front of the judge again, where's the ramifications for if our water is still bad? If there's still lead in it, who exactly is supposed to answer to that? I'm not saying that you guys have the answer. I guess I'm just saying, if no one here is to listen, or if there's no consequences to the action, what do we do next?
One of the things that has happened is that because NRDC and ACLU are professionals, they have attempted to solve this problem in the most effective way that they have to complete the work. They've taken the city back to court every time that they felt the need when the city failed to follow through with the settlement. We're at a point now that we're having conversation and exactly what you're saying. What do we ask the judge for? Because if the city of Flint, the mayor's office, and the folks he's hired to lead the city is not willing to comply, there needs to be some strong sanctions going their way to force them to get this work done. As the gentleman over here said, we will not be able to continue to just go back to court, as she said, and the judge ordered them to follow order. He's already ordered them to follow. Something must change. Our hope is that this go round, they'll do the work they're supposed to do, and we can put this to bed. But rest assured, I'm at the table. There's going to be some strong conversation in reference to what can we do to hold this. And you gotta understand government. If we hold the city of Flint accountable for not getting the work done, that affects you. If the city of Flint receives sanctions to have to pay money, that affects you. So it's a real thin line to get to where we're trying to go, because if we bring any sanctions, that's gonna be tax dollars that we need to go into the community. So it's a real thin line. I assure you, they are top notch. They're strategizing, they're thinking about process to get to where we're trying to get to. I can also assure you, they're not gonna quit until we get the work done.
And I want to add that since we don't want to sanction ourselves, because we didn't do it, right? There are things that we're going to do as a community and that we need to do as a community to hold these people individually and politically and professionally accountable. So again, we're just gonna have a little community meeting after this, because that's my fun part. I'm not the nice behaved professional. I'm not, but I would love to have more folks. Hey, you shush. Because we're tired, over it and all that stuff. But yeah, and if we do not want to punish ourselves because we've already been through enough, but there are things we can do outside of our that will hit them where it hurts.
This gentleman,
And we're gonna walk a mic to folks
Okay.
so that folks listening online can hear.
this gentleman, behind this young lady, and then the gentleman on the front row.
Well, good afternoon. First of all, thank you to all the work you guys have been doing. At the risk of being a bit naive here with the way the government works, I could just offer a couple things. Number one, I've been to the city a number of times to ask them, has my pipes been, and I get the kind of roundabout answer, well, yeah, well, your neighborhood. I says, well, I'm not worried about my neighborhood right now. I want to start with my house. And then if my neighbor has a question, he should come over. And as far as how they identify it, they're really good about sending tax forms out. It should be listed on your tax form.
Mhm.
This service address has certified that it's been done, first of all. And then the other thing is, and this is where I don't understand how these things work. If I'm driving down the road and I get pulled over for speeding and I'm issued a ticket, I have 30 days to get that ticket taken care of. And if I decide that I'm just not going to do it because I don't want to, because to heck with them, that's fine. Then a warrant will be issued for my arrest. And when I don't go in for that thing, the next time I get stopped, I get the warrant, I get this, I go to jail, I do this, I do that. I don't understand why people that we support through our tax dollars are allowed to just live this life that is completely immune to the laws that we all have to live to. It just makes no sense to me. These, you say, well, we have a thing now where we have a new deadline. Well, I think we're all, I don't see any 9-year-olds here. So most of us here probably pay water. We pay the highest water in the nation, number one. And number two, I mean, we all know the government. We know we're not living in caves. We know that the government never keeps their promises unless you do something that makes it hurt. And I agree with you 100% that if all of a sudden, you sanction the city of Flint or the state of Michigan had to pay $50 million, yeah, that's all just going to come around and hurt. If you go after their retirement or their pension, or you go after some of this stuff and you say to yourself, look, buddies, you guys can do whatever you want. By this day, you have to give us this information. And I've been a project manager my whole life. And what I've learned is that when people come in and say, well, we're gonna ask for a plan, that's the next step to delay, because they go, well, we had to put a plan together. So you got to give us initial 3 months because we had to put the plan together, and then they got all kinds of excuses. Where's the teeth in our judicial system that holds these people accountable? I would love to, it's like the senators and stuff, that all their medication, and I don't want to go off on a soapbox here, but the same thing. If you don't have city of Flint, if you don't have people's houses fixed, you don't pay water bill. You don't pay the water bill. And somewhere, and I realize that's going to hurt and it has ramifications, but you know what? If you don't get them where it hurts, and and it's not even not paying the water bill. To me, it's more, you know what, Mr. Mayor, we're going after your pension. You're not going to get a pension. If this passes this day, it's not up for discussion. We're not going to talk to the governor because, well, we know how that went, right? It goes on your things. No more, no pension, and you just start going down the line. I didn't know, and I commend the person who spoke about the fact that there's no DPW, because I've actually gone to the water place on Port Street, and I've asked a bunch of questions, because they dig up the roads and they fix pipes, and man, it looks like 9-year-old fixed it. And I went over and complained about that. I said, so anyways, we as a community, as a society, we elect these people, we pay their salaries, and yet they are completely immune to the laws that are imposed to all of us. I don't understand why, and it's not criticism on your behalf. It's my own ignorance to how these things function, because I'm sure it's complicated as all hell, you know what I mean? But to me, if a judge says, listen, Mr. Mayor of Flint, here's the plan. Number one, if you don't get this done, people are going to take 10% off their water bill. Just start at increment. And by the way, Mr. Mayor, you go without a salary until it gets fixed. And not just the mayor, but and you guys who deal with all these people and all these layers, and government's great about putting 15 people and sheltering themselves. Well, that's his responsibility, not mine. The buck has to stop someplace. And that's what I would offer is that, as a community, and I hope I speak for a bunch of people here, that we want to see some teeth into the freaking meat. So people go out, like when the dog bites you, I better do something, because otherwise it's just, we'll be here in 2029 they made a promise and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, that's my soapbox for the day. And thank you. very much.
And I think you see us nodding, we are agreeing with you. There has not been full accountability for all of what's happened, and there has not been yet full accountability for the commitments that the city and state officials made to this court to get this work done. And I wanted to point out, because I know we are talking about the city's failures a lot here, but the state government and the state of Michigan is also a defendant in this lawsuit. And they also bear responsibility for helping make sure that a solution gets fixed. So I think when we're talking about how can we come together to hold the relevant, responsible people accountable, I think we, are talking both about the city officials, all the way up to the mayor, including the Department of Public Works, who manages the water system, and including the project engineers that they're working with, but also the state government, which was, of course, a cause of this crisis to begin with and needs to be part of the solution, I think.
Yeah, we just need to punch up line and get them all.
Yes, first I want to thank NRDC, Sarah, and the rest of the team, and Melissa and Pastor Overton for having this session, because we've been wanting this. And we, the people, can do things that you're in the courtroom. We're in the legislature in the street. There's things we can do you can't do, but we need each other. So I'm thankful that you've had this community meeting. I look forward to more of them. Number two, since they've resumed water shutoffs in the city of Flint, people could not get pipe replacement if your water wasn't on. During the pandemic, when the governor had an executive order ordering people to get their water turned on and no more shutoffs, we had people calling us to get their pipe replaced because they couldn't before. Till the governor ordered, turn the water on. It's a part of the health crisis. So that's another challenge that we have, because in January, shutoffs resume. So people who don't have water on cannot, in the previous formula, could not get that service. So that needs to be fixed. And last but not least, I'm going to take the opportunity to say that some of us are already meeting and preparing some things, and we're preparing an audience with Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist, who promised us, he was here on primary day. He promised us that he was going to look after us, and what Ben Harbor got, we going to get, and all this good stuff. We're having an audience. Anybody interested in joining us and having that audience with the Lieutenant Gilchrist, please see me after the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Claire. I want to address the water shutoffs issue and the eligibility for pipe replacement. So under this settlement, if you had running water with the city, if you had an active water account at any point between March 28th, 2017 and today, you are eligible to have your pipe done and checked, even if you had it shut off at any point in the last 6 years. If it's currently shut off, you have to get it turned on to do the work. But the fact, and we know that that's a problem because the city is forcing people to pay to get it turned back on, but that should not be, that doesn't disqualify folks if you had a water shut off. So just want to make sure that that's clear, that the city should be still offering.
More important what you just said.
Yeah.
That part was my baby. That's something, when you said that just now, that was something that was it's very important to me that folks had their water shut off because they turned it off because the water was bad, or had it shut off because we pay the highest rates, 8 times the national average, in the United States. So please come tell me if your water is shut off and they're saying that you can't get your pipe replaced, come talk to me. Yep. Because that has been, yep.
I wanted to plug in the back of the room. We have 2 fact sheets. One is some background on what's going on with the settlement, and one is called Know Your Rights. We have them in English and Spanish and Arabic. There's some contact information on there for our team. That website is flintpiperemoval@gmail.com. So sorry, that's an email, but it's written there, flintpiperemoval@gmail.com. Hearing from you all about these problems will help the attorneys enforce the agreement. So it gives us the evidence we need to go back to court to show that the city is not keeping its promises and they're not doing what they're required to do under the agreement.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. A couple of my points have already been made, but just a few quick things. Multiple people have brought up the matter of consequences for the city should it fail to meet this new deadline, and made the point that we've had a lot of deadlines before and there haven't seemed to be any or really any consequences. You know, and I'm thinking back to last year, you mentioned, Sarah, that we went almost an entire year without any work being done. So we're not just talking about missing deadlines, we're talking about the existing deadlines not being enough to compel almost any work at all. So I'm wondering if you could help us to understand how it is we could go almost an entire year, over a year, as Melissa says, without any work despite the existence of a deadline, and why this time's going to be different. Secondly, you know, I had my pipe replaced in 2017. To this day, my yard still has not been restored. In the meantime, there's been all kinds of incidental growth, so you can hardly tell anymore. But anyway, at one point I learned that my house was actually on the restored list. So it was listed as having been restored, despite that work never having taken place. So I assume that those of us who might fall into that category should also be reaching out to you guys and making sure that they get some follow-up as well. So it's not just the homes that don't have any documentation, it's also the homes that, for whatever reason, have been listed as restored but have not been adequately restored. I just want to highlight that issue. And then finally, I'm really glad that you mentioned that it's not just the city that's a defendant here, it's the state, because, you know, we keep on hearing about all the failures of the city, and all of that, of course, is totally, you know, understandable. But we shouldn't forget that the state was a major player in causing all of this to happen. I know that it's on the hook for the money, but I was interested to hear that it's also on the hook for helping to get the work done. And I'd just like to know more about what that looks like. To what extent is the state at the table? Who from the state is at the table? What kind of assistance are they providing, or are they obligated to provide throughout this process? I think we need to know some of those details so that we can hold them accountable too.
Yeah, just to clarify, the state of Michigan, they're a defendant. Certain state officials are defendants in our case. The state of Michigan itself and Eagle. Thank you. So Michigan state officials were defendants in our case. That's who we sued. And as part of the settlement agreement, the state of Michigan signed saying they're going to fulfill what the agreement, and it's a long agreement, it's about close to 100 pages, I think, but they are responsible largely, as you pointed out, for the money up to 97 million. They are not required by the court order to physically dig up the pipes and do the restoration work. That was on the city. I think my point was, at a broad level, there should be some engagement from the state government to work with the city, pressure the city, do something to facilitate this work getting done, exactly because, as you all have eloquently pointed out, there has not been the kind of accountability that we need, and the work is not done. And as you also pointed out, the city has really grossly mismanaged this program, you know, to the point of not even tracking where they're doing work on a tens of millions of dollars program. So you hear the frustration, and you all are living it. So, you know, I'm really glad that we are all here and that you are all sharing this level of, you know, we're hearing the frustration. And I think our lawsuit and this law is, you know, it's more than imperfect. It's not enough. It does not do everything. And I think we're kind of, as you've heard folks mention, trying to figure out what are all the tools that we can bring to bear to facilitate getting this work done once and for all. Yeah, does anyone else?
Hi, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. Thank you for this town hall and for this information. We appreciate it. I know I'll speak for myself. I know I appreciate it. It seems like everyone else in the room does as well. Can you tell us what the percentage of pipes that have been completed versus those that still need to be completed? What is the percentage of that number?
Sure. For the digging, can everyone hear me? Okay. It's fine. Yeah.
And then can you also give us the anticipated date for completion?
Yes. So at this stage, as part of our efforts to enforce the agreement, the city has agreed to check 31,000 homes. So that is more than were envisioned in the original agreement. The original agreement envisioned that the city would only do 18,000 digs. And when it became apparent that that would not be enough to find all the lead because the city had no idea where it was, we negotiated with the city to get them agreed to this 31,000. Of that 31,000, the city has done between, let's say, they've done 27,000 excavations. And there's other homes that they've fulfilled their obligations to other ways. So the city is almost done with that piece, but they still have over 1,000 homes left. For restoration, the property repair work, I can't give you a percentage number because the city has no idea how much work is left to do. And therefore, we don't know how much work is left to do.
That was a bombshell we found out like last year. Great.
Talk loud. I have one comment though, and a couple of questions, but it's my understanding that the city of Flint offers a certificate to people. I know it's not many, but people who do move into the city, that they can receive a certificate that their water lines are safe. And I know you're not the city, but are you aware of that? Is that true? But it's been an understanding. Nobody knows. Okay.
Not aware of that, but we can.
Okay. And so in light of what you're saying about the infrastructure, water infrastructure repairs being really a lot farther behind than what the city is portraying, what about free water? And that's been taken away from the city of Flint. And since there's so much more, what can you do about that to get free water into the city of Flint? And one of you mentioned about communicating with the city of Flint. Do you do that regularly? And when you do communicate with the city, how does that go? And who is it that you communicate with?
Sure. So on the communication piece, we are communicating with the city's lawyer very frequently. And we have to do that because of rules around what happens when you're in a lawsuit. As lawyers representing concerned pastors and Melissa and NRDC and ACLU, we can't talk to the city directly. We have to go through their lawyer because we're part of a litigation. So that's our main point of contact. And the agreement requires the city to provide certain records regularly. So as Sarah mentioned earlier, we're getting regular reports so that we can track the status of what we're doing. And then we're following up if those reports are incomplete or we have questions about what's going on. So that's our main way of communicating with them.
Is it email from call? And do it, but that lawyer is not working in our behalf, period. So we need to find somebody to speak in here to go before that council and the mayor. So you have an ambassador to speak to your behalf. And you can't speak to nobody except that lawyer. Is that lawyer pro bono?
No, the attorney, the city government has a law department, so they have lawyers that work for the city. They're city employees. That those are the lawyers that are responsible for our lawsuit. On the free water piece, the settlement continues to require isn't more bottled water under this agreement. And we know that the city has stopped distributing free bottled water. There are continuing filter resources. So there remain at City Hall free filter replacement cartridges. And also the city said they still have free filters for anyone that doesn't have a filter. And the city must continue to provide those resources until at least 1 year after it finishes all of the pipes and all of the restoration work.
I'm sorry, excuse me, can you repeat it about the bottled water? Oh, I didn't understand.
Yes. So bottled water under the settlement agreement, there's no requirement to continue to distribute bottled water. There was a requirement originally through 2017, and there were some provisions that allowed the city and state to stop distributing that water when the lead levels hit a certain level. That was not perfect. And we know, Melissa, it was not perfect. And we know the settlement did not achieve everything that it could have or everything that we wanted. I think as the 4 groups and plaintiffs in the lawsuit, we had to make choices about what was important and necessary to resolve the lawsuit and get the relief quickly. So I think whenever you're making a decision to resolve a lawsuit, there are decisions and trade-offs that are made. And we know that it wasn't perfect. It did not get everything that we would have wanted. We're hopeful that it got a piece of something that will ultimately provide benefits to the community. What I was mentioning is that there are continuing filter resources for free available, and those will remain free at City Hall until at least 1 year after the city is completely done with its water infrastructure project, the pipe replacement. And free, yes, testing kits. Thank you, Melissa.
Also, with the bottled water, so the filters and the bottled water were not covered under the Safe Drinking Water Act law. Like we said before, the law is outdated. So we were lucky to get what we got from it. Unfortunately, but again, that's about fighting in legislature, changing laws, updating them, things like that. But then the donations were still coming into the 3 health centers, and then a certain administration let that slip. So if we all are angry like we are and want to do better, we can push back on those certain folks that let it slip and end, like as for the donations and the funding for the health center. So again, that's a later meeting. Everybody can get active and get saying something, make some phone calls, emails, show up city council to make the demands heard, because the more voices, the more that people hear from us, and not just our loud selves, not just us in court, but the more they hear all these different names, faces, addresses, and voices demanding the same things. That's how we get things moving. That's how we got stuff moving at the beginning. We had a lot of people giving depositions and telling their stories. So it still needs to happen. What's happening to us is still very important. It is still very, very much life and death for so many people. And it's still very, very, it's critical that we raise our voices and that we don't give up and that we don't go quiet. So meeting with Claire, getting out here, getting in front of the people that make the decisions and doing whatever you want to do, legally, kicking, screaming, whatever you need to do. I'm there for it. I'll support you as much as I can. And so will the rest of us who've been doing this, because every single person in this room matters. Your voice matters and your demands matter. We just got to get that back out there and get them heard, because I think they're all thinking that we've all given up, died off, or just went quiet, or we're just settling with the pieces they've given. So.
Okay, I'm going to read a question from a viewer that's watching online. So what can you do if you haven't been reached out to yet about restoration? Addie, do you want to take that?
Sure. So if you're someone who had your pipe dug up years ago and you're still waiting for restoration, you can contact the city now to let them know. We encourage people to do that so that the city can help the city figure out where they still need to do this work, since the city hasn't done that part of its job. You can also share that information with us. We would love to get your address and see a photo of your property so that we can help hold the city to account and make sure they're doing this work where they need to.
Been a lawyer for 40 years. The work that your team has done is exemplary. I don't know that anybody could have done better. And I understand that it wasn't perfect. I wish you'd stop saying it though, Sarah. It's damn good. And I think that as a than we had any right to expect. I have one question, 1.5, and I have a comment. First of all, there's a $10 million reserve provided for in the settlement agreement. Have they gotten into that yet? How far?
We have the last accounting we have.
Sure. By the most recent accounting, the city has $11 million left of the total 97.
That includes the $10 million reserve.
Yes.
Is it enough?
Yes. By our math, the city has plenty of work, even with very conservative estimates of how much property repair, they should have enough to get this done.
The half a question, which is kind of a takeoff on what you said on the filter replacement. They are only obligated to give the filters away at City Hall. Let's say supposedly some local activist decided it was a good idea to expand that system. Would the state still be required, if it costs more money, to provide filters to City Hall and then to be distributed, say, through the help centers, churches, community centers, senior centers, that sort of thing? You think we could work that, or do you think we'd run into some sort of
In schools.
So I have the settlement in my binder and I will triple check it, but I believe the city has discretion about where to distribute the filter resources. The state's obligation is to pay for those resources and to provide it to the city. But I'm going to pause because I don't want to misspeak, but I'll come back because I want to look at the text.
one more? Better give it to me before I forget what it is. All of these records are subject to the Freedom of Information Act. And you guys can't use it, but we can. And I don't see any reason in the world why somebody who was waiting around for restoration or didn't know whether or not they had it could not submit a FOIA request. And these are public records. They are obligated to provide these to you. You can ask if your neighbor's got it done. It's not limited to your house. They are a little bit pokey on honoring FOIA requests, but I guess I'd have to volunteer to help people who run into trouble. Melissa, and again, I'm not going to start bird dogging dozens of FOIA through the city because I'm getting old here and I don't really, but there will be resistance. Having said that, there's a tactical advantage to having a bunch of FOIA requests come in. For one thing, they don't like a fuss. For another thing, there's work that needs to be done. For another thing, they really don't want word getting out, I think, on how much we have yet to do. So, it's a practical approach. You can find the Freedom of Information Act request on their website and download it, fill it out, fax it back, keep close track on when you're sending it, and they will extend and you count the days and then get back to them. You need to watch them. I also would recommend that any contact with any city official should be well documented. So if you are calling to find out something that's going on, find out who it is that you're talking to and write down the person and write down the date and write down exactly what they said. And if they said, we're going to be out within 3 weeks, you call 3 weeks and 1 day. Stepping into your role, Sarah, do you have anything that I said wrong?
So I'm just going to follow up on the filters. So I'm reading exactly state parties. So the state will provide the city with filter replacement cartridges for the city to make available to residents free of charge at City Hall or another location designated by the city until 1 year. So if the city decided that it was appropriate to distribute those resources at other locations, schools, churches, help centers, it could do that. And
and the state has to provide those resources.
Let me say again, one of the problems that we have going forward with the city is their inability to give us information in reference to what they've already done. The FOIA request is a great idea, but I think, Sarah, you can help me if I'm going to be wrong, that going forward with the FOIA request, they're going to get the same thing from us. So what has to happen, we need to spread the word that if your yard has not been restored, you need to make it known that your yard has not been restored. If they put a door hanger on your door and say that we've completed your work, you need to let it be known, I'm not satisfied with what you've done. Because again, they have a large number of homes already that they claim they've done over the fall, that I want to make sure that that number doesn't just come out of the sky and they're adding houses in there as they go and say, we've already done those. So if we got to spread the word throughout the city of Flint that if your home was bothered during this time of replacement and you are not satisfied with what they've done, we need to know about it so that we can go forward and say, well, what about these homes? You have not done these homes. We can't get a list of homes right now that they can tell us that we got to go and do because they're saying we got to go check them all. So because of that, we're in a real tight situation here. But what has to happen is the residents of Flint have to come together and say, hey, my house has not been done. My house has not been done. There's a hole in the middle of my street. That way we can get our own database and begin to look at what they're doing, what they're telling us they've done, and we can compare with what they're saying. It makes it easier for us. Am I correct, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Share that database together. People know with your database and get it. We got to hire some technical people to work with us. Let's get it done. So we all know together. And everybody personal still want to say if their house is messed up. That's personal.
Many have barrels in their front yards and sidewalks still. You just drive up down Ballinger, you can see just barrels instead of yards and sidewalks.
Good evening. Good evening. I am an outsider. I moved here 2014. So I learned about the water September 2014. I lobbied in Washington, D.C. with the representative from Michigan. And we were told, 2017, that the water here in the crisis here would not be complete for 10 years. That was the language that was given to us when we lobbied. So we're embarking on year 9. And so I guess he was correct when he said 10 years before the water would be repaired here in Flint. But I would say the grassroots approach. I work in a school. I'm a school secretary. I also am an acting facilitator. You need to hit these parent meetings that happen every month in Flint schools to activate the parents, to move them to come and work. And we all have homes. Every year I mow, every year I shovel. I'm shoveling gravel that was placed there. And I was told we will be back next week to fill it in. And that was how many years ago? So I would say your best resource right now is to hit parent meetings in Flint Community School, which happen. They have a citywide every month, and they have a parent meet. It's 11 buildings. Each one has a parent engagement facilitator. Ask her, can you come in and talk to the parents? They always looking for a speaker. That is a wonderful place to start, to have people to go to City Hall and say, listen, this has not been done. This has not been done. You have to speak to them in a language that they can understand and say, hey, is the hole fixed in front of your house? That's the great starting point. You will get what you need. That's all I have to say.
I had made some phone calls when the water crisis first started.
And as the lawyers got involved into it, I was asking him questions. And he says, "What's your name?" I says, "My name is Lathan Jefferson." He says, and he had been through all the emails and stuff. He said, "You were the first one to call the White House. If this room calls the White House, they have a switchboard line and a comment line. But have yourself ready because the phone's only going to ring once or twice and somebody is going to answer it. And you can give your complaint about what is happening with you, such and such, Miss Roberts down the street is having this type of situation because they have not repaired the water lines." There's what, 50 people in this room right now? And if you can find other people to call, not call raising saying, "Why don't y'all figure out what we want?" No, call, "We have a problem and the problem has not been fixed." And
Ordered problem.
yeah, the court order has not been fixed. And the phone number is in the front of your phone book. You can look it up on your phones and it's nothing hard to find. I've called 2 or 3 times, but I don't call complaining or fussing. I call and voice my opinion on something. The governor has a constituents department. And you can call up there, explain where you're calling from, your whatever your problem is that you're not liking, and they take notice of it. But when you get 50 people to call, somebody's going to do something. And it's not that you need to be afraid to call the White House or Lansing because they work for you.
That's right.
Hi, I have a question for everyone in this room. I think we just re-elected a mayor. Is this the same mayor that was in office when the crisis started? Or is this the mayor that came on board after the water crisis started? And is this the same mayor that the city just re-elected? That's my first question. My second question, the city council members, are they elected officials to those offices? Oh, as my grandson says, oh, wow. That's it.
Answer to your first question, he was the state representative.
The water is the answer.
He was the state representative. He was on city council when he got turned.
Of course. Well, I just want to say one other thing. Having spent 35, 40. I'll just be quick.
Having spent 35, 40 years in the automotive industry, I've worked with a lot of all of the big 3 and many of the Japanese and other OEMs. And they have these specifications that are 55,000 pages long and blah, blah, blah. And they're written in a vernacular that you don't really even understand it. I mean, at the end of the day, and what I've seen from those 5,000 page specifications, it's that somebody was very smart to write a 5,000 page specification, because when they want an out, they go to page 47, paragraph 3, subsection 2, where it says, if the sun is shining on that day, we don't have to do it. And I've always, another quandary that I've had is why, the legalese, and again, is not a, you guys do what you got to do, but it should just be straightforward. It should be, you have to do this by this day, or punitively, these are the things that are going to happen to your organization, your, whatever. But I mean, I think there's more people that live in Flint than just the people in this room. And my fear is that people have acquired such an apathy for this entire process that they just say, you know what? Oh, they got another. And I applaud what you're doing. Don't get me wrong. I think we need to do this weekly, but there has to be, where's the state guy, the city guy? He should be sitting right there, and we should be able to ask them, hey, what about this and what about that? I mean, we're talking about this, this is our party. We need the guy to ask the question, or the mayor, I don't know what he's doing today, but I see him walking around 501, he needs to be sitting there, and he needs to be the one that we ask these questions to. I mean, we're asking you, but those questions get deflected, and it's just very unfortunate. And I honestly believe that there's in the country, there's so much apathy because, you know, people are just giving up. And, you know, smart people, people that make the laws, people that exercise the laws, and people that are responsible for the laws, when they're smart, they know, well, you know what, if no one's complaining, guess what? We don't need to do anything, you know? And that's, I get back to my little speech about the teeth. Believe me, when you leave here today, drive past the police station at 75 miles an hour, and if you get pulled over, believe me, if you either you pay that ticket or you'll be in jail in 6 months. It's that simple. So anyways, you know, these 200-page. I'm sorry?
Oh, you've been here.
In Michigan?
No, in this town.
3 years, 4 years.
That's why. You don't understand this town.
I preface what I said by
I'll explain it to you.
naive, but
I'll explain it to you.
I just wanted to ask a couple of things. The 1,000 pipes, lead pipes that are left, do we have an anticipated date of when those are due to be finished? And also, you mentioned that there's a website where reports can be found. Could you let us know what that website is? And the last question that I wanted to ask is, was anyone from the other side regarding city, state, notified so that they could be here, whether that's someone from their attorney's office? Just wondering if other representation was at least offered and invited.
Sure. So for those remaining homes that still need their pipes checked, the new court ordered deadline is August 1st. And, you know, we have every expectation that the city will meet that deadline and we'll be making sure they do. The website where you can find the reports and other information is nrdc.org/Flint. And that website is on the bottom of the fact sheets.
We did not notify the city about this particular meeting. I think the intent was to have a community focused meeting about updates about the lawsuit and the settlement. But I think, so that's where we are on that, but hearing the feedback that it would be helpful and that folks want to talk directly to the city government. Melissa, I don't know.
I'll give it for you.
Multiple times. Yeah, skip me.
If I may, I don't need the mic. We have an offense and a defense. Okay.
I was just wondering, my name's Blake Sale. I just moved here. I was wondering, like if somebody decides to get a job working doing that, are they gonna, like, if they don't meet the criteria of getting this pipe fixed and everything else, are they gonna get repercussions for that? So if you guys do get like an inspector or somebody to handle that stuff, like, are they gonna be the ones taking repercussions for that if they don't meet the deadlines?
You're talking about a city employee.
Yeah, so if somebody comes in and they get a job and they can't meet the deadlines, are they going to be receiving repercussions for that, or?
So our case, the defendant is the city of Flint, the entity, and certain state officials. So it would not be an option for the plaintiffs in this case, nor of course would we want to go down that many layers to focus on individual employees that are just executing the jobs that they've gotten with a contractor or subcontractor. The focus of accountability for our lawsuit is the defendants in our case, which is the city government and also the state government. Thank you for the pause. So I'm going to just take one more question from online. The question reads, I sent my paperwork in for the water settlement online. They emailed me and told me that I signed it improperly. Does that now make me ineligible for the payout? So I think this question is referring to the settlement in a different case. That's not this case. So this case does not involve damages. It does not involve money payouts. This case is about the pipe replacement program. So I think I don't know the answer to this question because it's about a different lawsuit.
I think we got you can contact with the lawyer and tell them that we're gonna take this to City Hall. That means the 50 people here and all of us and you will be there speaking to that attorney, and city council and them got to show up because you would have the right to put some kind of injunction or some kind of force on him to speak to you all at City Hall. So then we can all show up at City Hall and the mayor's office and everybody right there and there. Like, we could do the same town hall at City Hall. That'll move something right there. Good idea.
So I just had one question. This will be my last. So it may be subjective or subject to opinion, but is the water safe to drink? Like with or without a filter, could we drink the water? Okay, that's.
If you can smell your water, if you can see your water, floaties in it, discoloration, see it, smell it, taste it. And there's anything that you can see or smell, the water treatment. That's
So theoretically, nothing has changed in the last decade or so?
Things have. Some of the pipes have been going out, but then since then, the mayor is blending our water source that's been happening. And so the lead levels have gone back up. At this point, until every piece of, in my opinion, in my personal non-plaintiff opinion, until every piece of infrastructure that was damaged, so in the mains and the streets, the service lines going to our house, and our interior plumbing, appliances, and fixtures are replaced, there's no guarantees. And until they also stop blending and experimenting with our water source. So everybody needs to go with their gut, trust their gut, their nose, their eyes. And if you don't feel it's safe, don't let somebody just try to shame you saying, Flint fatigue, it's gone on so long, it's over, get over it. Or try to say it's psychological or you guys are just afraid. We know better, okay? If water's coming through contaminated infrastructure, crumbling, rupturing infrastructure, it's not gonna make the water better. So trust your gut, take care of yourselves, protect yourselves. That is number one.
Okay. So continue to pay, but stay away.
Yeah, that's about it.
I think everybody in here should keep in mind that depending on what neighborhood you live in, if you live in a neighborhood with a high vacancy rate, that water is not flowing the way it should. Even if you do have your pipes replaced, that's a problem. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Side. And I saw somebody up here. And I saw Mr. Jefferson.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you so much for providing this information. The Flint Communication Group is working with EPA to have a summit, a series of informational sessions. The city of Flint has agreed to participate in that information. And so also Sarah has been in those conversations and her team to also provide information. Other community leaders that have been working on that task force will be in touch publicly when that next session is. So I wholeheartedly agree that there's a lot more information, tons of more communication that needs to go bilateral and bidirectional so that we feel safe and have clear communication on what's going on with our water, the pipe replacement, and all other restorations beyond the lawsuit. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for joining forces with us. And I say with us because we've been in this fight from the beginning. But my one question is and concern is that because they have not finished or did the complete work, when the last pipe gets fixed, will everything be fixed then? Or will they have to start back over to make sure it's flowing correctly? Because it's been so long. If they had went on and did it, that would be one thing. But because they had so many interruptions and delays that by the time they reached the end, where will we really be at?
Go ahead, go ahead. Yeah, team. Let them ask you that.
Let them answer. I forgot what I was gonna say.
So that's a great question. Where are we going to be when the last service line comes out? As Melissa was mentioning, the city has continued to mess with the water source, and they've done some blending between the water that comes through Detroit system, the Great Lakes Water Authority, and the Genesee County system. And we have seen troubling changes and instability in the water and lead levels that have gone up a little bit. So the water, what we hope and expect, you want to see your lead levels go down and stay low consistently across seasons and across time. And of course, there's no safe level of lead. And so I think NRDC, we're a public health organization, so we take a very conservative approach towards maximum public health protection. And of course, our laws in general across this country are not fully health protective. And even if, City of Chicago, other cities are complying with every law, that doesn't mean your water is safe, which is horrifying itself. So we continue to recommend that everyone continue to use filters while this infrastructure project is ongoing. And the city is required to continue monitoring, and our team, our scientists are continuing to look at that reporting to try to understand what's going on with the water, because you're exactly right. It's been a long time and they are continuing to not have consistent source for the water.
I think if a lot of us remember Howard Croft, how many people remember Howard Croft? Howard Croft was the city's liar. Whatever they scripted him, he came down and spoke on it. And we caught him probably in a different 100 as a lie. But he was the mouthpiece, which was part, his father-in-law controlled him.
I think we got to the point where right now we can feel like that this is a crime. Just like the water crisis thing, we just need to be prosecuting them as a crime. It's time to our water, our humanity. Instead of just waiting for them delays, it's time to prosecute them, Maybe you need to become the new, how you say it, the water crisis attorneys. You know what I'm saying? Because they're not doing anything. So we now put both of them together and start filing a crime against them, because that's what you just said. You public health officials, you deal with the public's health and what's going on, and that's what the water crisis was about. When the attorneys are supposed to have been fighting for that, our right to what had happened to us. So it's happening again. It's happening right now. That's a crime. So I think we should be following that.
They got charged with a misdemeanor.
Don't pay that parking ticket.
Yeah.
Evening, everybody. George F. Grundy II, Flint resident, born, raised, drank the water. So my question is, and it kind of goes off what he was saying, what I believe it's like 97 million in this whole process. So out of that, once the pipes are done, if people haven't already, who's the recipients of the rest of the money, the remainder of the money? Who else gets paid, or who has got paid?
So the 97 million as part of this agreement, and there's other pots of money that are in other lawsuits, but this 97 million came in part from the state government and in part through the federal government into the state government. If there is leftover money at the end of the project, that is the state money, that money of the reserve will go back to the state. If there is leftover federal money, because Congress in 2016 appropriated $100 million for Flint for water infrastructure, the city can use that money for other water infrastructure projects beyond the lead pipes program. And the city government, the process is it works with the state, Eagle, and it works with EPA to decide how that money is going to be spent. But the money will mostly go into Flint's water treatment and water infrastructure.
So none of the money goes to any
So, yeah, so this lawsuit is about forward-looking relief and fixing the problem going forward, getting the lead pipes out. Of course, the community, individual residents, children have suffered health harms, have suffered property damages, and they are owed compensation for that. That is being addressed through other laws and other lawsuits. And so there's that big settlement, the 640 million settlement. So that is a different case. So our case only addressed one slice of the global injustices that have been done to the community.
That's how I understood it. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
That's what it was.
Yeah, great question.
I got a question. How is it that they allowed Eagle to be able to manage any of it when they were the fox in the henhouse? Understanding they had to change their name to Eagle to try to rebrand because of where they people. Politely put.
It's a good question.
Same question goes. Who's managing Flint's project now? Roe helped get us to this place. So it's just government. I think the best thing I can share with you is that we must continue to be aware of what's going on in the city of Flint, and then be willing to speak up about what's wrong and what we need to do to change it. Again, let me thank NRDC and ACLU for all that they have done to help the residents of the city of Flint. We help them get partner. They have taken a lot of heat,
Yes.
over the years for what they have done to try to help this community. And then as we go home tonight, I want to remind you of something that was said. Let me say this, that was said early in this water crisis. The residents of Flint have to show that they're a community worth going out on the limb for. That was the conversation when we were being poisoned. Is Flint a community worth going out on the limb for? My brothers and sisters, we have to begin to mobilize, be together, and speak up together for the good of this community. Everything that's said tonight has been plus. The attorneys are here. I'm glad you came out so they could hear you. Now they understand better how the community feels. Thank you for coming out. Again, if your line has not been removed, has not been checked, and you requested it, you need to follow up and make that known. If your home has not been restored properly to your liking, you need to make it known. The only way they know to go and fight is we have those addresses that they can go and check. They check addresses. They go and check. They don't just get the information, they check. So if they have the information, we can follow up and get the work done. But they don't live in Flint. They have to have the addresses to get it done. So again, we're going to say good night. And we're going to, again, give them a hand clap of praise. Last person we'll hear from, person will be Sarah Tallman.
Just wanted to make some announcements for the folks in here. So in the back, we have some note cards. If you have any questions or comments that we didn't answer, feel free to write that down on a note card and put it in the bin. If you want us to follow up with you, just put your name and how to get in touch with you and we'll follow up. We also have a notepad if you have a question about what's going on with your address, and just write down your name, the address, and how to get in touch with you, and we will follow up to figure out what's going on with your specific address.
Is there a sign-in sheet for the next meeting so that people will know when it is?
That's a great idea, and we will get a piece of paper and put it by the door so you can make sure you're on the list. There's a sign-up sheet. Terrific. Yeah, so that would be great.
And please take fact sheets, and we printed way more than we needed for this meeting, and we encourage people to take some to hand out anywhere you spend time, in a school, in a church, at your workplace, give to your friends, etc. Help us spread the word.
And it's coming in. So please take.
Thank you. Thanks to the Flint Public Library and thanks, Melanie.
Yeah. Yeah.